Cathar Love number 95. Important Cathar healing. And it certainly was important to the Cathars. They were known as healers. And certainly they were well advanced in herbal medicine, as well as the laying of hands for healing. And this set them apart probably from everybody else, certainly in the religious area. And sometimes the Cathars referred it to as a bit of a death cult, because their idea of when it's time to die, well, it's time to die. You just give the people their last rites, which in their case was a consolamentum, when everything is forgiven. And from that point on, you allow the person to die as naturally as possible, just giving them sufficient food and water to keep them going. And if some people, some extremists they actually committed suicide that way, well, we have extremists everywhere. But basically, they weren't into, they didn't see dying as something nasty. Dying was the portal to going home, so it was something to be celebrated rather than shying away from. And also because they're not worried about going to hell or damnation, so there was nothing to stop them hanging on to this life as long as they possibly could. So healing was a major component of Catharism, and of course to the people, especially the poor, this is a tremendous advantage. And apart from that, they weren't into they didn't use it as for making money, so they didn't set up practice as a doctor or anything like that. Interesting, in Henry VIII's time, I'm going to diverge just for a second, but it's an interesting story, that the doctors, the professional doctors at that time, they were upset with people who were healers and local herbalists, and sometimes in the village, and people who had expertise with herbs, and as they were more into bloodletting. So they prevailed upon Henry VIII to give them they had a monopoly on medicine. So he did that. But what happened? The price of medicine suddenly doubled and tripled and went sky high. So Henry VIII, from that point on, he put out a charter saying that anybody, this is in England, who had an expertise in some aspect of medicine would be allowed to practice that medicine. So the English alternative medicine has a charter from Henry VIII, which is missing in Australia and certainly missing in America, USA, because there's certain things as far as medicine is concerned that you just cannot practice. Colour therapy being an instance. But certainly from the Cathar point of view, healing was a major component. So, as regards myself, I was very interested in herbs. I suppose I'd call myself a herbalist, and I moved into more as a hobby or self-interest. And then I had jewellery shops, but of an evening and every Sunday I studied Chinese herbal medicine for 9 years. So I'm certainly a healer. I like to help people as far as that's concerned. But I'm not much of a businessman, because I always felt uncomfortable taking money, even though you're assisting people. And one thing after another happened, and I just felt I had this energy in my hands, and I used to use it on myself if I had a tummy ache. And then I helped a person with some birds who were ill, and I couldn't give them Chinese medicine or anything else. So I said, best thing I can do is use my hands. I lay there and and it worked. So that was good. So it couldn't be psychological because it was a bird. And in fact, I have a letter here regarding from one of the birds, and it just said here. This is in 12th of January 1999. So I was healing at that time. So that's 17, 18 years ago, 20 years ago. On one very memorable occasion, John administered healing to my pet canary, Sunny. Sunny had suffered a heat stroke a few years earlier and was prone to bad turns, where he would become very distressed and turn around and around in circles on the bottom of the cage. John happened to be there when Sunny had a particularly severe attack and he could not stand up any longer and I thought I was going to lose him. John administered healing to him, which quietened him and obviously improved his condition as he was back on the perch within hours and eating and drinking normally. It was a very moving experience. So I've done dogs and cats and one cat. But why animals? Animals are important because when I did the healing with an ordinary person, I thought, well, maybe this is just a psychological healing, or who knows what's going on. But when it's a cat and a dog and a bird, you know it's not psychological. You know, actually there is a healing going on. But I had no one to teach me, no one to show me. I was moving blindly, just doing it instinctively, but getting some remarkable results. And so my friend then, Jim, or Gulyam, who with the Cathar dialogues, and he had this the dialogues with Henri, my book, the Cathar dialogues, and in excuse me, here we are, the Cathar dialogues. He says here, firstly, there should be a short period of meditation to engage the sensual aspect of the soul with compassion. The capability should be exercised with the greatest humility and never for material desires. Well, I certainly was doing that because no matter whatever I healed, I've never taken 1 cent from that. I for various reasons. One, I don't want to. I find money comes to me in other ways. But the other thing is, if I'm taking $20 or $50 or $100 from somebody to do a healing, then obviously they're more expectant of results. And the one thing I learnt, and I certainly have learnt, is just to do it and not pre-formulate any results, just allow those results to happen. And he said here, should be exercised with the greatest humility and never for material desires. This does not mean the grateful recipients of the healing should be denied the expression of gratitude by material things. Material reward should not be the desire or purpose of the healer. It may result incidentally. And then he goes on that the experienced healer should even abandon, once you've got that capability, even abandon the meditation. There should be no seeking after signs or wonders, but they will come. And so he's basically saying to detach oneself and to do the healing. And then he expresses what actually happens. It often happens that some physical reaction occurs at this point. This is caused by the movement of the spiritual soul, which impinges on the sensual soul and hence the body. The most frequent reaction is a sense of heat in the healer's abdomen, but many other physical reactions may occur. When the healer approaches the one to be healed, he should make a short withdrawal of the mind from everything but compassion. compassion for the fellow sufferer from the source. Well, this is Catharism. This is Cathar's aspect of healing, where we have compassion for that human being, that respect for that human being, because he is also another person who has the separation from one's divinity, in our case the source, or to another God. Because from a Cathar point of view, our whole purpose, our existence, is ultimately to be reunited with God, in our case the source. The healer always feels something goes out from him to the sufferer. The healer feels a temporary lessening of himself. This is purely a reaction of the senses. The more the healer perceives himself as a bridge between the source, or in your case, or someone else's case, their divinity or God or whatever they believe in, the sufferer the more effective he will become, or she will become. This is sufficient for now on the subject of healing. So, this was my only ever my instruction manual on healing, until a friend of mine in London who is a healer, and he mentioned Dr. Eric Pearl and his book the Reconnection, and I really love it because Dr. Eric Pearl, he's a chiropractor. He had a chiropractic business, and he's given that up to pursue the arts of healing. And he just gives a no frills. Back was broken, and according to the vet, and he said, I'm a vet of 30 years. He said, I know a broken back, but he said, but anyway, there was a healing, and later the dog stood up and barked at a cat. He said, well, hang on, how can he have a broken back if he stands up and talks to a cat? So he said, better take the dog home and just see what happens. And a few days later, the dog was walking. A week later, was running, and 3 weeks later, was moving rocks out the way so I could escape out and go for a run. So, yeah, remarkable things. I have another letter because I did ask a few people, too few, unfortunately, because they wanted to pay, and I said, no, I don't take payment. This way I'd have no expectations. I just do it, and then whatever happens, happens. And so this particular person, he had 2 or 3 operations on his knee. He couldn't walk, he couldn't drive the car, he couldn't swim, he couldn't dance. He had a walking stick, he had painkillers every 2 hours. He was a mess. And this is a Monday, January 2003, so this would have happened in 2002, because he took a year to write the letter, because he thought it must come back. It's been over 1 year since my life took a very unexpected turn, and I'm taking this opportunity to express my gratitude for your cooperation. Anyhow, we'll skip that. And he just talks about what happened. As I remember, you asked me to take a seat and told me to close my eyes. What happened next has not been written in the medical journals. My right knee started to get warm, and then hot, and then very hot, and soon after a sharp pain started to appear where the doctors had performed my last operation. So sharp that I was very concerned at what was going on. However, the pain started to decimate in a way that I can't explain unless you had felt it. That was not the end of it, only the beginning of what was still a mystery to me. My right knee, lateral meniscal, started to behave in the same way as my articular cartilage. The warmth and the pain appeared and decimated soon after. So now it was time to open my eyes and go for a walk. As I started to walk, I felt the difference from my limping. There was no limping, there was no signs of pain. I waited and waited for the pain to return. Up to now, just a year later, the pain has never returned and the painkillers have stopped. John, this is a letter. Is nothing in comparison what you did for me, and is my humble way to thank you for your infinite help with my ongoing chronic pain. Had it not been for you, I would have had to have my 3rd and probably 4th operation on my right knee, etc., etc. So that was Raphael. healing can be quite amazing. And if you certainly read Dr. Pearl's accounts of some of the healings that he had, absolutely amazing. And certainly one he mentioned, Gary, and this is very important because this Gary talked about his healing, and this guy, then he ended up on TV, and Dr. Eric Pearl has given talks everywhere and seminars, and so he's very well known, although at the same time, until a few months ago, I had never heard of him. But I'm here in Australia and he's in America. But one particular person, he came to him and he was crippled since birth. He had problems when he was born, and one of his feet were twisted in, and he had real problems with walking. And on the second session, the feet started pumping, and the end result was that his one foot, the inturned foot, became normal, and he walked out of the room and walked down the stairs normally after 25 years of this particular problem that he had. So there's nothing short and remarkable of what can happen, and he calls it a reconnection. He also refers to the fact that this is going back to abilities that we had in previous periods. So I just want to draw your attention to this book, and because if people are inclined and they feel they have a talent in this direction or calling in this direction, I literally did not know where to point them, and now I can just say, please buy the book on Amazon or Kindle or from your bookshop. It's called The Reconnection, Dr. Eric Pearl, and he certainly point you in the right direction. Now I can only speak from a Cathar point of view. He said you cannot teach this. It's something you can pass on. There's something you can make people aware of, and they can bring forth this capability in themselves. But you can't simply teach it. Like other things, you just can't teach a technique. He can show you ways of doing things, but it's not a technique. Like you could learn surgery and how to do a operation for appendicitis or whatever. Now I know you can pass it on because my partner Monica, and who's always trying to help people and with herbs and different things, and she's learning about that. And I just had this feeling that she had this, that she could be a healer, and then I passed it on, held her hands and so forth. And one of the first things she did was telling her sister, and the sister, well, I've got this pain here, I've had it for 15 years, and I'd love you if you can get rid of that. And Monica did a healing, and lo and behold, that pain's gone, and it's been gone. And she's been going in confidence and done some quite excellent healings. And I can relate to this being passed on as like a person being a catalyst, because I think I mentioned it before on YouTube, one of the YouTubes, but there was a Mr. Jeffries, and this is in Ingham in North Queensland, and he was a dowser, both with a pendulum and also with a forked stick, and he would dowse for water on people's properties. But before he went to that particular property, which was anywhere in Queensland, which is a huge area, a huge state, and very dry in parts, and people need their water, so he would dowse with his pendulum on a map of that person's farm or property, and if he could find water with his pendulum, then he would go out there and he would dowse with his stick for water, and he only charged people if they got the water, if there was water there, and he didn't make too many mistakes. But anyway, we were talking, and he said, John, he said, you try it with the stick. There's water over there. You walk along with this fork stick and see if you can locate where the water is. So okay, and I took the fork stick in both hands, and I walked, I copied what he did, and nothing happened. Just a dead branch in my hands. And he was disappointed because we've been talking about using the pendulum and dowsing, and he knew I was interested. And they said, look, I've got an idea. So what he did was, he took one part of the fork stick with his left hand. He held my left hand with his right hand in the middle, and then I took the right hand fork of the fork stick. So in this manner, we walked together, and suddenly that stick, it just pulled and pulled and pulled, and you cannot restrain it. The pull is so powerful. So he did that, and he said, now you try it on your own. And this time, when I went, it pulled, and it just, you cannot restrain that stick. It just turns and turns and turns, and then slaps against your thigh. And I had it, and from that point onwards, I've been able to douse for water with a fork stick. So I understand when Dr. Eric Pearl says that when he does these seminars, and there's people who are interested in healing, he can activate these people, and this is something that he can do. So although you can't teach, it appears that one can activate another person. So from my point of view, I'm talking about Cathar healing. From a Cathar point of view, we do it as a service. If I can help somebody, I'm happy to help them. I can't heal the world. I'm not out to heal the world. But if I feel someone, for whatever reason, like the last one, there's a friend, a dancer, and he was just so red in the face and sweating, and it was 1 year ago today, very close, because it was Chinese New Year, and I said to him, Happy Chinese New Year. And he said, oh, well, I don't know about that. He said, I've just come from the specialist, and he said, I'm the Western New Year. He said, I'm unlikely to see it. And I said, oh, well, what's the matter? He said, I've got a tumour between my ear and the brain. So my doctor said, I'm not likely to see the year out. They said, I haven't told my family yet. And he said, and I haven't told my girlfriend. I said, oh, wow. I said, oh, best of luck. And I went back, but when I went back, I had this like a monkey scratching on my back. And he hasn't told his family, he hasn't told his girlfriend, and yet he's told me. And I thought, I'll just make him an offer. And I said, look, mate, I said, I think, I do healings, and maybe you should come around and I just do a healing and just see what happens, and and do this before you talk to your family or your girlfriend. Yeah, he said, I'll do that. So he came around in a week, and I did a healing, took 20 minutes or whatever it was. There's a little voice that says to me, that's enough, okay, finish now. And so I didn't see him for 2 weeks, and he looked good, not red in the face. I said, how are you going? He said, oh, great. He said, I worked the full week. I worked on the weekend overtime. And he said, but I feel great. But he said, oh, no, next week. I said, why is that? He said, I have to go back to see the specialist again. So in 2 weeks, there's a week after the specialist, there he was, bottle of wine on the table. I said, okay, what happened? He said, good news. I said, well, what happened? He said, there's nothing there. He said, there's no tumour. It's gone. He said, there's a bit of calcium between my ear and the brain. It's a bottle of wine for you. Oh, thank you. So there you are. So over to you. It's such an important part of Catharism, healing, and one's not has to lay one's on hands and heal birds and dogs. Healing can be listening to somebody. Healing can be just bringing your attention to that particular person, having compassion for another person, listening to them, listening to what they say, and just sometimes the listening, the fact you're there, the fact you gave them a hug, the fact you held their hand. All this is healing. I mean, even your GP, chiropractor, osteopath, herbalist, Chinese herbalist, Qigong, acupuncturist, these are all just components within the wide spectrum of healing. And healing with one's hands is just another component within this wide spectrum. Bye for now. Talk to you again soon. Bye.